We will now move to our city council. All right. Hello again. It is Monday, June 9th. The time is now 7:03, and I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Urbana City Council to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Wu.
Here.
Councilmember Evans.
Here.
Councilmember Hersey.
Here.
Councilmember Colasetti.
Here.
Councilmember Bishop. Councilmember Bishop. Councilmember Wilkin.
Here.
Councilmember Quisenberry.
Here.
Mayor Williams.
Here.
Okay.
All right. Next item on business is approval of the minutes of our previous meeting, which there were none. So the next item we have, are there any additions to the agenda? All right, seeing as though there are no additions to the agenda, we will now move to presentation and public input. First, we will have a presentation from the Champaign-Urbana Reparations Coalition. Would Councilmember Evans like to provide an introduction?
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight, Pastor Jeff Trask is here to propose and submit an ordinance that would form a reparations commission for African Americans in Champaign County. He will provide a brief overview of reparations, provide a historical and current example of harms done to African Americans in Champaign County, and discuss the objectives in the proposal for the commission. Pastor Jeff is one of the leaders and founders of the Champaign-Urbana Reparations Coalition, whose goal is to educate the community on reparations and help get a commission formed. He is also on the African Descent Citizens Reparations Commission, which is a governor-appointed statewide commission for reparations, one of 3 states in the country to have such a commission formed. Additionally, he is the Midwest Regional Leader for First Repair, a national reparations organization founded by Robin Rue Simmons of Evanston, Illinois. Lastly, he is part of the Global Circle Working Group, Partnership and Movement Building, which is a global reparations efforts collaborating reparations efforts around the world. Pastor Jeff has primarily been a resident of Urbana since 1993 as an undergrad, spending all but 4 years living in Urbana. He is the founder and operations director of the Champaign County Christian Health Center, a free clinic that provides medical, dental, and mental health care for the uninsured and underinsured in Champaign County. He has his PhD in community health from University of Illinois and has served the community in several capacities over the years. And with that introduction, Dr. Reverend Trask, you have the floor, sir.
Dr. Trask, if you would pull one of the microphones towards you and hit the button so that the light turns on green, and then you'll have 10 minutes.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Council, for having me today. I think I was here about 2 years ago. I just kind of introduced this concept, and I'm back here 2 years later, ready with an ordinance. Thank you for those who came out to our Thursday reparations town hall. I know Mayor Williams was able to come, and Chris Evans and some other people, so thank you for that. I won't be too long before you today. I just want to kind of, as Chris mentioned, give a little overview of reparations and why it's needed in general and what we can do here specifically in Urbana. And I won't go through any of that about me because Councilman Evans did a great job with that. I did want to tell you a little about our local group. The Champaign-Urbana Reparations Coalition is a group of volunteers and folks who are basically trying to promote reparation efforts in Champaign County, and we're trying to do that by having a commission formed for African Americans in Champaign County to identify the harms that were done to African Americans over the years and to come up with recommendations to try to address those harms. Our group started about 2 years ago. We had a nice kickoff event with Robert Rue Simmons, came down to Champaign and was able to draw about a couple hundred people to learn more about reparations. Why? There's a big answer to that question, but in general, we have centuries of enslavement, discrimination, prejudice, inequities, disparities, and racism. lost opportunities in land acquisition, home ownership, employment, education, fair representation, even in sports. And of course, we have slavery, Jim Crow, mass incarceration, healthcare disparities, and the wealth gap. And I'll also briefly mention the could-have-beens too. The Bruce family, you might be familiar with, was a family that owned land in California about 100 years ago and got it taken away from them in 1924. And so they lost the land. The good news is that they actually won a lawsuit recently and regained that land, now worth $20 million. But what's interesting is that there was another family that did pretty similar things to what the Bruce family was doing. The Bruce family was providing a place for families to have vacation on the California coastline. There's another family that was doing the same thing around the same time, around the same area, and their last name is Hilton. And so there's also lost opportunities that we have over the course of generations of this kind of mistreatment. So when people hear reparations, they often think about something that's kind of far-fetched or polarizing or politicized or on the fringe. But the reality is that reparations is actually not as a crazy notion as many people may think. When it comes to why we need reparations, the story is that the United States is the wealthiest country in the world, and no one would ever argue that. But people often ask the question, how did the United States become the wealthiest country in the world? Well, you got to look at the history. When the country was formed in 1776, it was brand new, just got on the map. From 1776 to 1860, it became the #2 economic entity and country in the world. And we're talking about surpassing countries that have been around for thousands of years. Egypt and China have been around forever. How did the United States go from 0 to 2 in 84 years? Well, it was because, in large part, through the cotton trade. If I were to give you an analogy about how this all worked, if I owned a grocery store and I had a competitor who owned a grocery store down the street, and I paid my employees and my competitor did not pay their employees, if anybody in business knows that your labor costs will use about 65% of your overall cost, a pretty significant portion of your expenses. So if my competitor doesn't have to pay that 65% and I do, needless to say, I'm not going to be in business very long. The United States was able to create that type of environment in the sale and delivery of cotton for hundreds of years. And having that ability to take everyone out the competition and be one of the sole providers of cotton across the world led to the United States getting 53% of all their dollars just from cotton trade alone by 1860. And that was just one example. There's other products and things that they were able to produce and take advantage of, but this was the economic portfolio which the United States was founded upon. It was able to become this wealthiest country where people come here from all over the world to seek opportunity. And that opportunity has been derived from that history of free labor. So our group is all about trying to do three things: educate, have acknowledgement, and reparations. The education piece is vital. I've been immersed in this for a while. I've been trying to learn more all the time, and I'm discovering new things on a regular basis. And as Chris mentioned, I'm involved with reparations on a local, state, national, and international level, and I'm still learning new things. And so education is vital. When people learn more about reparations, learn more what it's all about, that changes that narrative that people often have about it. And frankly, you can really pare it down to two things. One is that when you do something to hurt someone, you apologize. I don't think that's all too unfamiliar concept for humanity. And two, when you're harmed, you deserve compensation for that harm. When I go to Chicago and drive along the highway, half the billboards have attorneys saying, hey, you've been hurt in an accident, give me a call, right? Not a new concept by any stretch of imagination. It's also not new that other groups of people have gotten reparations over the years. Japanese Americans, Native Americans, the Jewish community, and even former slave owners, when they lost their property, they were given reparations for their loss of property when slavery was outlawed in Washington, D.C. The other key part is acknowledgement. And why is this important? Well, there's a difference between good programming and programming for services and things of that nature and reparations. And acknowledgement is that distinction, is what distinguishes those different things. Is actually pinpointing a specific harm that was done to African Americans and then being able to address that specific harm. So for example, in Evanston, Illinois, they identified the specific harm by showing that the city of Evanston practiced redlining, like many cities all across the nation did. So they identified that section of Evanston where people were forced to live, that was divested over the years, and every statistic you could think of was worse there than other parts of Evanston. And they identified the years from 1919, specifically 1969. So if you lived in that specific area in that specific time frame, you were eligible for reparations due to that history of proven and documented redlining that the city of Evanston was part of. And so that's how reparations are done appropriately, when you identify very specific harms that were done and you address those specific harms, just like the lawyer trying to get someone some money when they had the car accident. And then the third piece, of course, is reparations, because without the reparations part, then it's just talk. But I would like to make a comment that reparations is not just about money. It's about a lot of things. It's about policy. It's about practices. It's about procedures. It's about ways of going about your day. It's education-based. There's so many things that's a part of reparations. The money is a key ingredient, obviously, because you need to do something to rectify the harm. The example I like to give is if I was falsely incarcerated when I was a young man at 20 years old, 30 years ago, and I lost 30 years of my life being falsely in prison, and I get out of prison, usually what happens is that a person gets a lawsuit. This kind of story happens, unfortunately, too often. You see it in Chicago quite often, unfortunately. And so I don't want $0 after I spend 30 years of my life in prison when I wasn't supposed to be there. So I want something, and that's where the reparations comes in. You do want to try to get a token of justice. And speaking of that token of justice, it's not a gift, it's not charity, you're not doing me a favor, you're actually just providing justice, a token of justice for what is due me. We do have our own history here in Champaign County when it comes to these kind of issues. You may have heard our county clerk, Aaron Ammons, talk about the racially restrictive covenants that still have race-based language in them today. He's working towards trying to find owners of these properties so that we can get that language out of there. But the language actually says, no part thereof will be sold or leased either in whole or in part, or permitted to be occupied as owner or tenant by any person or persons not of the Caucasian race. And this affects about 774 parcels of land in Rantoul, Savoy, Champaign, and Urbana. So again, we're no exception to this type of history there. One thing I also mentioned too is that some of the areas that African Americans were forced to live, like the north end of Champaign, for example, they did some research back in 1991. Dissertation research showed that when they interviewed folks that lived in that area, some of those areas didn't have plumbing or outhouses. And so they asked one person, how did you use the bathroom? And he said, well, we just waited till it got dark. And so that was in 1951 that was taking place. So again, some of this history is not that ancient history either. And I mentioned what County Clerk Ammons is working on there. There's a couple other examples of disparate treatment when it comes to housing in Champaign County. I won't go through the details of that one, but time's running low. This is a map showing currently, or possibly currently, where the red dots are where African Americans live in Champaign-Urbana today, and you can definitely tell there's some very concentrated sections of that, and then that's due to the legacy of redlining. All right, so what is my ask? My ask is to assign or to create a commission for the Champaign County. My hope is that the Champaign City Council and the City of Urbana will be a part of it, the City of Champaign and the Council will be a part of it, the Champaign County Board will be a part of it, and we'll try to poke and prod UIUC to be a part of it in some form or fashion. And then in addition to those groups, we also have a commitment from State Rep Carol Ammons to have somebody represented on the commission as well, and the majority will be African Americans from the community because they are the ones that need to identify what the harms are in their communities and be able to come up with recommendations of how to rectify those harms. So our ask is to create that commission. We ask for a representative from the City Council to participate on that commission. We believe that, of ownership, so to speak. So if everyone's kind of in on it from the beginning, part of it from the beginning, that will aid in terms of once the time of recommendations come around, will aid in that process. And then we also are asking each entity for $25,000 to sponsor this commission. The idea is to create do a couple things with it. One is to create a harms report. As I mentioned earlier, it's very important to be very specific when it comes to reparations. Sometimes it takes a lot of research. In Evanston, they had a person who did research for 30 years, and we don't have that here. So we're trying to have that research done through that, and then also—
Mr. Trask, give me 1 second. I was going to say I can make a motion to extend time, or I can ask for a motion to extend the time. I'm sorry.
Move to extend the time.
Second.
Motion made by Sharice, seconded by Mary Ellis. Voice vote.
Oh.
All those in favor, say aye.
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 All those opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll be done in a minute, too. So we want to use that money to collect information from the community. We were fortunate to get a Healing Illinois grant recently, and that's how we were able to do the Reparations Town Hall recently at Love Corner. We want the commission to be able to do things like that as well. And then there's lots of different ideas. I believe that reparations is only limited to our own creativity of how we can utilize reparations. A quick example I give is New Covenant Fellowship, the church that I speak at. They decided to make reparations personal. So any African Americans who have attended the church, their children or grandchildren are eligible for an education fund. They start that fund at $1,000 to start it off, and they pay into it $500 every year until the kid graduates from high school. And they can use it for trade school or whatever education-related activities they want to have, and it's owned by the families they give it to as well. And so there's lots of different things we can do with reparations, again, only limited by our creativity. And I do lastly want to say, this is not a new concept in terms of what's going on around the country. As Chris mentioned, I'm the Midwest Regional Leader. We have monthly meetings with cities all over the Midwest, Kansas City, Detroit, St. Paul, Minnesota, just all over the place that are either have commissions in place already that are funded. Chicago's commission is funded at $500,000, Detroit at $300,000, Kansas City at $340,000. So, you know, I'm giving us a break at $25,000. There's other efforts. Asheville, North Carolina got approved $5 million approved for reparations. Shelby County, and where Memphis is located, got approved for $5 million for reparations. And of course, Evanston, our beacon, has already paid over $5 million in reparations to date. And so lots of different examples of this happen all across the country, and I would love for our community to be included in that group there. And I'll conclude there. We do have a state, I mentioned earlier, I'm on the state commission as well. We do have a hearing here in Champaign-Urbana, September 20th. We're holding at the Krannert Performing Arts, and we'll hope to get the community to come out for that as well. Thank you for the extra time.
All right, thank you, Mr. Trask. Now at this time, if there are any questions from the council. Grace.
Thank you so much for the presentation. I'm really glad to see this moving forward, and I think already in the budget. And I didn't know if that was in there, if there was any more details of the commission's budget that you were able to share.
Yeah, specifically, like, I'll give you an example of what we're doing with our Healing Illinois grant. We were able to pay one young lady who's getting a PhD at U of I to put together a research study and survey so that we can get input from people in the community about their feelings about reparations, what they feel the harms are, what they feel should be paid out in terms of how reparations ought to be dispersed. So we're getting that input, and so we're able to pay that young lady to do that research. We had another young lady we were able to pay with that grant as well that was able to help us coordinate our reparations town hall and do all the busy work related to that. So things like that can happen. We also paid for the speakers to come from, we had one from St. Louis, one from Kansas City, one from Chicago, so we had resources to bring them in to educate the public about reparations as well. So it'll be things like that.
Thank you.
All right, Sharice.
Okay, my question is, because you compared, well, you told us about the other cities that have put things in place for reparations already, or?
Both. Some have already have money for reparations, some have commissions that are funded.
Okay, because I know you're talking about Evanston had dispersed. Where is their revenue coming from to do that?
Great question. So they get $10 million from marijuana tax sales, and they also get another $10 million from real estate tax transfers, specifically for homes over $1 million. So Evanston is obviously quite up there when it comes to income and revenue. So they are able to raise $10 million just from the sale of homes over $1 million. They also have $1 million that comes from the local faith community as well.
So is that an annual amount that they get? They get $10 million. They got $10 million from marijuana dispensary sales.
Yeah, I don't know how often that happens. That's a great question. So I don't know how far how many years that's dispersed for. Mm-hmm. I just know they're at the 5 million mark in terms of dispersing it so far, and they just kind of keep plugging away and actually looking into other forms of reparation now too.
Okay, and my other question is this in perpetuity, or is there a date of when this will start to die down?
As far as our notes in perpetuity, because both of those things are ongoing for the community there.
Okay, and the other thing, because you realize that, Urbana doesn't have that same kind of revenue, nor does it have the population to make that revenue.
Correct. I would imagine it'll be relative to our community.
Okay, so you're thinking in terms of what would be dispersed, or what programs might be formed, or whatever would be in totally in relation to what our population is here.
Absolutely, because the way I feel is that it's about the intent and purpose behind why you're doing it.
Right.
If we identify specific harms that are done, and if we do something towards those harms, but the key thing is, again, is acknowledgement. So this
Right.
specifically is what the harm is, and we're addressing it this way, because we're never going to be able to compensate all the pain and all the things
no.
that happen over here. So, but the actual effort of moving in that direction, because I would love for this effort to become a normative thing, where every church, every city, they just have in their budget. It's just a normal thing that they do. And almost kind of related to the marijuana movement, if you will. It wasn't that long ago that marijuana was like this really bad drug that was clumped into all the really bad drugs, and now you can go down the street and buy it, right? In a relatively short period of time, that narrative changed about marijuana. So I would love the reparations movement to kind of have that narrative change, where again, it's a fringe thing, but it goes from fringe thing to just a normalized, oh yeah, of course we should do reparations, because there's all kind of areas of harm that were done in healthcare and education, and go down the list.
Are there any, is there any movement toward getting the federal government to pay their fair share?
Yeah, needless to say that the current situation is on a little bit on hold.
I was gonna say.
But we do have champions on both the Senate. Cory Booker is taking it on the Senate side, H.R. 40, whatever they call it for the Senate side. And then the House H.R. 40 is Ayanna Pressley is the new mantle holder for H.R. 40. So they're still pressing envelope, and it's still in the cosmos there. But we also believe that many things start on local, state levels anyway,
Right.
before it becomes a federal thing. And so that's why we emphasize so much what we're doing on a local level, and we'll build it up from there.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any additional questions? Jaya?
Thank you so much for your presentation. I agree with what Grace said. It's great to see how far it's come in just a couple of years.
Thank you.
Could you clarify for me again who the potential partners would be? And did you say that it would be an equal amount from each that's being asked for? Not trying to put a damper on it, but going back to that population and income piece, it's just helpful for us to know who's being asked what.
So as far as the commission specifically?
Yeah, the
Yeah.
cost piece. Yeah, for now.
So the ask would be $25,000 from the city of Urbana, $25,000 from the city of Champaign, $25,000 from Champaign County Board. So that's the current plan. We have talked to various UIUC officials. While personally supportive, they just know with the current federal situation that they're obviously they probably can't officially partake, even though we do eventually plan to have maybe someone from UIC on there, but not necessarily officially representing UIC. But yeah, so other than those are the three, that's the main as far as each group.
Thank you.
All right, Mary Ellis.
Have you approached Rantoul? Because you made mention that there's a lot of covenants in Rantoul.
Yeah, we have not yet. That's a great question. We probably need to kind of tap into some research there. But again, that could be part of the commission as well, is maybe they can be part of that, or informed in some kind of way, or participate in some kind of way. But yeah, that's a great point.
And do you have any kind of rough guideline in terms of how long you think the commission will take?
It totally varies. It depends on the resources in terms of doing the harms report. Like for state of Illinois, they had been functioning since June, 3 years ago, June. Their harms report is coming out this fall. So it took the state about 3 years to pull it all together. Usually, from my experience, you got about a couple years typically for commissions to come up with a harms report. And then attached to that harms report are specific recommendations on how to address the various harms that were done to African Americans in different areas.
Okay, and I assume that you'll be able to send us these, if they haven't already been sent, the slides.
Oh, yeah. I think, yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
I think the slides are also in the packet already
well,
and on
okay.
the public website in the meeting packet, so the public should have access to them as well.
All right, thank you.
And our website has lots of information too. So we have a repository of articles and books and all kind of things, and links and resources as well.
Sharice, did you have something?
Just one more question, because when I was looking at this earlier, the thing that came to mind was Southern Illinois and rural Illinois. And are you guys thinking, because you're saying statewide, regional, and national? So how are you going to eventually? Because Southern Illinois is like Mississippi. So my question is, are you going to eventually, or are you now even putting in place something that would be regional to that area as well?
As far as the state commission is looking at all of Illinois. There have been public hearings downstate in East St. Louis and Belleville so far. They have one planned for Carbondale. Central Illinois, Peoria and Champaign are the two cities, and then Rockford and Evanston and Chicago were the northern cities. They did Springfield as well. So they've been trying to be holistic in their approach. But things like, the salt mines, for example, is one of the things I'm sure will be highlighted in the report, where they practiced slavery after slavery was outlawed in Illinois to have enough work for the salt mines. Things like that will be highlighted.
Pianism, yeah. Okay, thank you.
Chandra, did you have any questions or comments?
No, I didn't. Thank you so much.
All right. Well, I'll just say, Mr. Trask, I appreciate, you putting in the work and the effort, behind this. I've followed the last couple of years and, given my 2 cents, no pun intended, behind the scenes, very early on in this conversation. So I'm extremely encouraged to see that it's continuing and that it's actually growing some legs and getting some traction. I want to give a shout out to Councilmember Evans for bringing this to the forefront. It was definitely something that I was thinking about, and just to know that we had, council folks with like-minded, mentality to want to see this forward progression takes place, it just reassures my thoughts and excitement to, to be serving alongside these folks. So while we don't have $1 million, we got 25 on it, and I am presenting that, in the budget, and it's my hope that we can, see this thing move forward. So we appreciate you. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you. Thank you again for your time. All right. So now we will move on to public input. So I know there's a couple, but if there's anyone who's wishing to give public input, you can now come to the mic. You have 5 minutes. Please state your name in the microphone for the record.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Rick Breitenfeld. I want to speak to you with concern about OSF's closing. Thursday was a very interesting bit of news to be hearing all this, and I'm sure most of us were kind of shocked by it, especially when those of us who've not followed it very much, it kind of came out of the blue. I heard something about them getting magnet status, which is a top accreditation, literally completing on Wednesday, and then I have friends and family contacting me that we're having some kind of email and, oh, by the way, we're going to close in 60 days. 60 days. My son works for Carle. I enjoy Carle Hospital. I think most of us probably have attended or gone to Carle for a variety of our needs. I'd love to tell you that the emergency room is always fast and efficient. It can be very busy. I know that Carle has 495 beds, and that other than today, they've been at about 490 days, or 490 beds used out of 495 almost every day since Thursday. Today, it's only 423, thank goodness. Carle's an amazing asset for this community. It's a shame to have Health Alliance leaving us from jobs, and I've got friends who are affected. But I don't like having all of our eggs in one basket. I don't like the thought that we might lose OSF as a hospital, as a facility. The ability to get in for a colonoscopy in a week or two versus 2.5 weeks to 3 months. I enjoy, to be honest with you, a lot of the things I've dealt with Carle, but I don't like the idea of losing OSF. That's something that has helped service the community and some of the, it's just a little spooky to have all of that just fall on Carle when I know that it looks like Carle's almost maxed out. I don't, the state of Illinois has something in place for stuff like this. They have the Illinois Health and Facility and Services Review Board. That board, point blank, can say, and that's part of the reason why that also kind of concerned me, was the quick, fast track they want for an exemption to get closed, to get it closed quickly. Like, they would like to have the approval next week to be able to pull this in 60 days. This seems way too fast. This is a huge hit to our community. To not have an alternate choice, to not have it, and to be honest with you, I love the idea of them bringing in the psych facility, the idea of 40 additional beds for young adults, 18 to 26, in geriatric. But to lose an OR, to lose outpatient surgery, to lose the outpatient pharmacies, to lose all the things that make that hospital a hospital. It's done. It's a psych hospital with only admission, an ER that's going to only be able to accept psych patients with a 25 holding and a 40 bed. We lose a hospital. There is no other choice. I would really like to recommend, please, if you would all consider reaching out to that review board and telling them, wait a minute, no, not this time. I have no problem necessarily with them closing this at some point, but this going this fast, this quick, with what was them going for magnet status literally to the day before, it just seems very quick for this. It just feels too quick. They've obviously known what they were going to do for a year and a half, and then suddenly quick they want to drop this on everybody. I would like to recommend all of you please consider, as the city council and please, Mayor, consider telling the review board no. Tell this review board no. And sadly, it sounds like this might have to be dealt with this week as far as telling them no, because they're probably going to have to make a ruling as early as the 18th. Thank you.
Are there any additional public input?
Hello, people of Urbana. Let's see. My name is Stuart Levy. I live in Champaign, but I work and spend a lot of time in Urbana, so I feel like I have a stake here. And I'd like to read a statement along with Lila. We are UC Jews for Ceasefire, a multi-generational group of local Jews in Urbana-Champaign who stand in solidarity with the movement for Palestinian liberation. Since February of 2024, we have built and continue to grow as a vibrant local Jewish space. Many of us connect our support for Palestinian liberation to our Jewish values, which hold all human life as sacred and demand that we wrestle with systems of oppression within our communities and beyond. In recent years, right-wing and mainstream organizations, the mass media, and several U.S. government administrations have weaponized the concept of anti-Semitism to censure any criticisms of the state of Israel, including criticisms of Israel's brutal attacks on the people of Gaza. Support for Palestinian human rights and self-determination are also being labeled as anti-Semitism. The widespread adoption of the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, the IHRA, definition of anti-Semitism, which equates anti-Zionism with anti-Semitism, is a major driver of this weaponization, and it's a cause of significant public confusion. Too many Jewish institutions embrace modern political Zionism, including unwavering support for the state of Israel, as the only possibility for Jewish belonging and identity. They're accompanied by loud, influential voices in the Christian Zionist movement, as well as Project Esther, promoted by the Heritage Foundation and supporters of Project 2025, to wage a national campaign that furthers this manipulation of meaning. At the same time, more and more Jewish people are rejecting Zionism and questioning Israel's legitimacy as they learn about the history of Zionism and persecution of the Palestinian people. Considering Jewish history, it is impossible for us to remain silent about another genocide, this time perpetrated in our name. Never again must mean for all people everywhere. A more germane definition of anti-Semitism is the Jerusalem Declaration on Anti-Semitism, which was developed by an international group of scholars with expertise in Jewish studies, Holocaust studies, and related fields. Signatories include 4 University of Illinois scholars. Here is the definition. Anti-Semitism is discrimination, prejudice, hostility, or violence against Jews as Jews, or Jewish institutions as Jewish.
Hi, okay. Hi, my name is Lila Leopold. I'm a resident of Urbana. I'm also a member of UC Juice for Ceasefire, and I'm just reading the second part of this statement that members have collaboratively worked on together for the past few months, because the group keeps growing and we keep working as democratically as possible. So these statements take some time, but we wanted to take this opportunity to share the most recent language with the public, so that anyone who's interested or seeking support in this realm can find us. So to pick up where Stuart left off, UC Juice for Ceasefire is opposed to real anti-Semitism and all forms of discrimination. We know that real anti-Semitism is on the rise across the world, and we realize that equating anti-Zionism with anti-Semitism is a strategy that makes it harder to address the real thing, and not only harms Jews, but the society at large. While the weaponization of anti-Semitism has been an issue across U.S. administrations, it is especially relevant now due to the recent executive orders on anti-Semitism that specifically target institutions of higher education. Already in 2024, the UIUC administration signed an agreement with the Office of Civil Rights of the U.S. Department of Education to implement several measures ostensibly aimed at combating anti-Semitism, but that in reality stifle speech and academic freedom in our local community. We call out these false claims of anti-Semitism that are being used to harass, silence, and attack scholars who dare to critique Israel. Organizations that promote solidarity with Palestinians and the victims of Gaza and ignore the voices of Jewish people who critique the weaponization of Zionism as a tool for promoting white supremacy. We call on all people of goodwill to think more deeply about what constitutes true anti-Semitism and to oppose that concept's weaponization for U.S. military, economic, and diplomatic support for the State of Israel. We urge all local, state, and nationally elected officials to take whatever actions they can in promoting free speech, freedom of assembly, and the protection of human rights for all, citizens and non-citizens alike. And we call on all university officials to do what they can to protect the rights of and to offer assistance to those advocating for a liberated Palestine in our community, including university students, staff, and faculty. We encourage everyone to engage with the rich diasporic diversity of perspectives in our communities and resist the one-dimensional narrative that Zionism is the only way to keep us safe from anti-Semitism. We know that our safety is intertwined with the people of Palestine, and none of us can be free until all of us are free. So that's the end of that statement, and anything else I say here is just me speaking as me, just to differentiate the group voice from me here at the microphone. But I think this statement can be relevant at any time, but I think especially now as we're combing through the various layers of harms in the community, it's important to pause and reflect where things that are put forward in the name of protection are actually doing harm for everyone's equal right to protest and speak. And we're seeing these things very clearly, so we're working hard to try to disentangle the weaponization of this term in ways that is setting the groundwork for harming larger members of the community, if that makes sense. So thank you all for listening, and the statement is also available on our website, which is ucjfc.org, which has information on other statements if people are interested. And I'm really grateful for the presentation on reparations as well, and for you all here. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public input?
Hey everybody, my name is Derek Briles. I'm a resident of Urbana. I really appreciate the comment from UC Juice for Ceasefire, very thoughtful. and I think very timely. And I don't think that this is, this is not disconnected from Dr. Trask's presentation about reparations, which was also wonderful. And it's not even separate from the concerns about OSF closing and Health Alliance closing, right? I didn't think any of us with the eyes to see and the ears to hear know our country's not on a great path right now. And that's evidenced. We can see that here locally, right? And I think it's all of our duty to do something proactively to stop the decline, right? To stop things from getting worse. I don't expect you as City Council or Mayor Williams to change the world. That's not realistic. I do expect you, though, to do what's in your power, and I do think you have the power to do a lot of good in this community. So I unequivocally support creating and funding a reparations coalition. I think that's very important and a small step forward that could engender a lot of goodwill, right, and build bridges across communities that we desperately need. I ask you also to very strongly consider the proposed ordinance about review and approval of surveillance technology by police. I think, this real-time crime center from UIUC, Chief Boone's continuous dataless requests for more funds are very disturbing, right? While it might not have been UPD that violently arrested peaceful protesters on campus, it happened in Urbana. It happened under your watch. All of you on council were on council when that happened. And now these people, if you're paying attention to the news, they're on trial now, right? They're all getting convicted for peaceful protesting, for expressing their political views. And it's your job to make sure that that is safe and that's a protected right. And you've not done that, nor have you been particularly vocal about supporting the people in your city that were wrongly arrested for this and prosecuted unfairly by a clearly biased and Zionist state's attorney who has a long history of over-prosecution and protecting murderers, right? 3 police have murdered young black men in her tenure, and she's protected all of them almost instantaneously, right? She doesn't even wait for the state police to finish their reports. There's a lot you can do to make things better. Fund this reparations committee, charter that, make sure that happens. Listen to the more disenfranchised and at-risk people in your community. I mean, it's not great if you look around, right? I mean, 25% of Urbana lives in poverty. You know what the poverty rate is in this country? It's pretty damn low. Nationally, it's 11%. In the state, it's 16%. It's 25% in Urbana, 25%. Nationally, white households have about $90,000 a year in income. It's 56 for black households. I don't think Urbana is so unique that that disparity does not exist here as well. And from 2012 to 2023, over 50% of bookings into the county jail were of black residents. And I think in Urbana, 17% roughly is African American, roughly 14 in the county. I mean, these are grievous statistics. You have some really serious work ahead of you, but you have opportunities to do it right. You have an opportunity to make sure that surveillance technology is reviewed and approved before it's purchased. You don't have to keep giving the cops more money, right? People who have means aren't committing crimes. Stop crime from happening. Don't react. Give people jobs. Make sure there's decent housing. Read the township's reports about the shitholes in East Urbana that these people live in, that everyone's so nervous about in these dangerous neighborhoods. It's not the people, it's the conditions they live in. They need opportunities. They need open ears. They need open arms.
Thank you.
there any additional public input?
Hi. Hello, my name is Jessica Yassine. This is my first time coming to Urbana City Council. I'm a resident of Urbana. I've spent a lot of time at Champaign City Council. I've moved here a year ago. I've been spending a lot of time there working on a ceasefire resolution with them. First and foremost, I wanted to say, Mayor Williams, it's really lovely to meet you. I voted for you. I'm so happy you're in office. Ms. Wilkin, thank you for showing up a couple of weeks ago. It really meant a lot to all of us. I wanted to say I'm generally really happy living in Urbana. And I really wanted to come in here first and foremost to show my gratitude to our new mayor and to Ms. Wilkin, and of course everyone else as well. I wanted to also state that I also am behind us funding for the Reparation Coalition, a lot of what the gentleman before me just said. And I look forward to working more with you guys in the future here, because I also, I work pretty closely with UC Jews for Ceasefire. I'm very much behind ceasefire in Palestine, being Arab myself and Muslim as well. But I just wanted to get a chance to just really introduce myself. You'll be seeing a lot more of me. And I just wanted to say thank you, and also just make a little small jokey thing about the fact that your chairs are a lot more comfortable here than at Champaign City Council. But it was really lovely meeting you guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, is there any additional public input in person? All right, I have one letter to read into the record. Dear council members, please read this letter into the public record. I am writing in support of the comprehensive plan, Imagine Urbana. As a member of the CU Urbanism Club and an Urbana resident, I support a variety of housing options and am excited that Urbana sees a future where residents can choose the housing style that best fits their needs, whether it's an apartment or a single-family home. Planning for more housing means that Urbana is planning for a vibrant future. Please vote yes to adopt Imagine Urbana. Thank you. Best, Anna Ho. All right. Oh, sorry. All right, now we will move on to council input and communications. Are there any council members who want to provide input? Grace.
Thank you. Just wanted to give some appreciation for the reparations presentation, and that's already included in the budget. I'm really excited to see that making some concrete steps and reflecting in our budget priorities, and I look forward to continuing to do that throughout this month, working through the budget and how it can reflect our values and shared goals as a city and what our priorities really are in some difficult upcoming times. I appreciate a lot of the input tonight. I support a letter to the Review Board of Hospitals about OSF closing. I don't know if we can push that off on the mayor and like staff people who maybe have time to research and write a nice letter in a short amount of time, but I'm in support of that. I also appreciate the statement from Jews for Ceasefire. Appreciate that continued work, and also definitely support free speech and protections for those exercising it. Don't know how we can help on that one, but yeah, would love to talk more on any concrete steps we can take, and agree with investing in our community and some prevention things to have a healthy community. And just overall supporting human rights and protections locally and globally, and how important that is and will continue to be. So those are some of my disorganized thoughts. Thanks.
Thank you, Grace.
Sounded pretty good to me, so I'm mostly going to say what she said. I appreciate that, and I'd also like to piggyback off of one specific piece that came up in the presentation we had this evening. We've been informed previously, because there's only one dispensary in Urbana, we can't have a concrete amount told to City Council about how much we are receiving in tax dollars. But that is income we didn't have in the past. So I think knowing that there is income we didn't know we were going to have, as we're looking at how do we put our social justice values into practice, I think that's something for us to keep in mind, that that is money that wasn't there a couple of years ago. And also, you know, for people who partake, think about where you put your money. So just, I think that's something that we do need to think of, especially as we're in this budget season, and as everyone always brings up, every budget, a budget is a moral document, and we need to think about how our values are being laid out and what we put our money towards.
Thank you, Jaya. Mary Alice?
I just wanted to let the public know that there are several Juneteenth activities that are going to be happening next week, and you can find all the details under the executive department on Urbana's website. I don't want to, there's lots and lots of things going on, so it'll be exciting. And I did want to let council know that when we did the tax for marijuana, the estimate, Elizabeth, you can correct me, but I remember the number of 200,000 was kind of the estimate at that time. Whether we realized that amount, it was low, in my opinion, because it hadn't even happened, and we know that sales kind of went up high. So that's the number that I remember. Maybe Elizabeth can correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, your memory is better than mine because I don't remember what the number was. That's been several years. So since then, we still have just the one dispensary, and we can't disclose that because the Department of Revenue requirements, while at the same time there have been dispensaries added on the other side of Wright Street. So I do fear a little bit that that's been maybe pulling business away from our lone dispensary.
All right. Mr. Quisenberry?
Yeah, thank you. I know that when we talk about these things, it's really hard to talk about accomplishing things in this community without a partnership with the University of Illinois, since it has such a huge influence on this community and this region. In light of that, I want to mention that Dr. Charles Isbell was introduced today as the next chancellor for the University of Illinois. I'm looking forward to him as a new leader. Dr. Robert Jones has done a really good job over the past 10 years, but the torch is being handed off. And for individuals who are looking for a new partner in things they want to accomplish, I recommend they talk to the university.
All right. Anything additional? I will say, while I don't have anything to add on to what was said, and I appreciate everyone's input, I will just make one statement just for council folks. If we can email Kate at some point in time, just with your dates and things that you'll be off throughout this summer, that would be great, just as we move forward. So that's all I have. All right. Next is reports of standing committees, which there are none. So we will move on to items forwarded from the Committee of the Whole. First item on the regular agenda is resolution number 2025-06-036R. Mr. Quisenberry. Sorry, I was moving fast.
Yes, resolution number 2025-06-036R, a resolution approving the City of Urbana and Urbana Home Consortium Consolidated Plan for fiscal year 2025 through 2029 and annual action plan for fiscal year 2025 through 2026 was recommended by the Committee of the Whole.
Second.
All right, motion made by James, seconded by Mary Alice. Is there any discussion? All right, Grace, I am so sorry.
That's okay. Thank you. If I could just slip in a few questions. Thanks for your patience with me being remote last week. Thanks, Braden. I think kind of caught my attention on the memo for this ordinance, page 26 of our council packet, which is maybe different on different versions. I was curious about this table at the bottom of that page 3 of the memo there, that talks about the home projects. And there's a table at the bottom, and it lists 5 as Champaign Affordable Housing Development and then 6 as Urbana Affordable Housing Development, but the descriptions both say Champaign. So I don't know if that actually is Urbana or those actually both are in Champaign. And I'm sorry if I missed in the document where it maybe says
Thank you for bringing that to my attention. That's just a typo.
Okay.
So the Urbana Affordable Housing Development, that's for projects in Urbana, and then the Champaign Affordable Housing, that's for projects in Champaign.
Okay, and that's just in the memo, just.
That's
total
just in the
board
memo,
typo.
correct,
Okay.
yep.
Okay. And then I don't know if you could help shed some light into the planning and admin costs. Is that just because it's a percentage of a lot of these? We're just like capped out at the percentage?
Yes, so the planning and admin portion for home CDBG and home ARP, which are reflected in the consolidated plan, HUD has capped those amounts. So for CDBG, we're capped at 20% of our CDBG allocation. For home, we're capped at 10% of our home award to be reserved for admin. And then for home ARP, we were capped at, I believe it was 15% of the total grant that we received. So those amounts that you see, if you're looking on the memo at the 1-year goal table on page 3, the planning and admin amounts on line 4, those essentially we just take, what's the 20% number, and then we budget that for our planning and admin costs.
Thank you. And another maybe more broad question here. CDBG, we're expecting to spend like $4.6 million over the next 5 years. And that's where that $3 million potentially over the next 4 years in the budget comes to play if we were to lose CDBG. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yep, the idea is that in the event, so we do know we have funding secured for this upcoming fiscal year, so beginning July 1 through June 30th of 26, we have received those funding allocation amounts. So it's really for the 4 years after that, because we're in, the budget in this plan reflects that 5-year period. So since we have the first year of funding already committed from HUD, the idea with that supplemental funding was that in the event that there's disruption to any of those remaining 4 years of funding, we would have some money set aside to ensure that our programs, certainly our staffing can continue because again, our staff are paid through these grants. So the idea was to have some funding set aside to secure staffing in the event that there's disruptions to our HUD allocations, and then to ensure that some of the programs that we operate, especially our housing programs that are really critical to Urbana residents, could stay operational during that time if there's any disruption.
And home ARP, we think are less at risk?
Well, so to clarify, that amount that's set aside would be to essentially supplement all of those in the event that there was a disruption. So it wouldn't just be CDBG, it would be as well home, if that, because home and CDBG operate similarly. We receive those annual allocations. So the idea behind that set aside was, if there's disruption generally to any of the HUD programs, that we have funds to continue to supplement some of our projects and programs.
I'm sorry, could you remind me, is this consolidated plan is all of Champaign County or Champaign and Urbana?
So the consolidated plan, the answer to that is yes. The CDBG funds that are covered in the consolidated plan are Urbana specific. The city of Urbana, we get those funds. They can only be used within the limits of the city of Urbana. The home funds are a little bit more expansive because the city of Urbana manages those funds on behalf of what's known as the Home Consortium, which includes the city of Champaign and unincorporated Champaign County. So we are administering funds. We get a portion of the funds. The city of Champaign gets a portion of the funds, but we bear the administrative burden. So we keep the admin cap and then essentially pass through funding to the city of Champaign. And that's the amount that you were referencing earlier. I believe it's, where did it go? The 1.7 million, that's the Champaign's portion of the home funds.
Okay, thank you for explaining that again. I think every year. Thank you. Then just for discussion-wise, I agree with some of what Jay said last week. This is a really great document as far as some housing study, and I appreciate some of the statistics and demographic info and the surveying and stuff that y'all have done that's gone into that. I also appreciate some money in there for housing inspections and stuff and making sure that we're keeping up with preventing closures of affordable housing. And also with development, probably just for later conversations, but when we have existing buildings that could potentially be renovated, that's environmentally a better option than a greenfield site, and maybe not always economically, but to look into replacing maybe some of our lost affordable housing options as well. Thanks.
Thank you, Grace. Any other discussion? All right, seeing none, clerk, will you please call the roll?
Councilmember Wu?
Yes.
Councilmember Evans?
Yes.
Councilmember Hersey?
Yes.
Councilmember Colacetti?
Yes.
Councilmember Bishop?
Yes.
Councilmember Wilkin?
Yes.
Councilmember Quisenberry?
Yes.
All right, that motion passes. The next item on the regular agenda is resolution number 2025-06-037R. Mr. Quisenberry.
Yes, thank you. That resolution, a resolution approving the Housing Program Manual for program years 2025 through 2029 is recommended for approval.
Second.
Motion made by James, seconded by Ms. Wu. Is there any discussion? All right, seeing none, will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Wu?
Yes.
Councilmember Evans?
Yes.
Councilmember Hersey?
Yes.
Councilmember Colacetti?
Yes.
Councilmember Bishop?
Yes.
Councilmember Wilkin?
Yes.
Councilmember Quisenberry?
Yes.
All right, that motion passes. All right. The next item on the regular agenda is resolution number 2025-06-038R. Mr. Quisenberry.
Which is a resolution approving an intergovernmental agreement by and among the Champaign County Treasurer, the City of Urbana, and other local taxing bodies affected by the President's property tax exemption case. And that is moved by the Committee of the Whole for approval.
Second.
Motion made by James, seconded by Jaya. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Grace?
Thank you. Just trying to understand the amounts here, and I'm sorry if I'm missing something that was already covered on attachment A for how much Urbana is paying. So we're paying almost 1.5 million, and it looks like that's more than anyone else, including the school district. I was just confused on if this was property taxes, why it is that way. And I understand enough that the disagreement there between the taxing bodies about how much everyone's paying, but didn't know if we could have some more understanding as to why it is the way it is.
Yeah, so looking at the attachment, we're paying the second most of the taxing bodies. So the City of Urbana's contribution under the intergovernmental agreement, the way the parties have structured this would be the 1.498, and then Unit 116's contribution is 5.338 million. So theirs is significantly larger than everyone else, actually more than the rest combined.
Okay, thank you. That makes sense. I went to Champaign School, so I'm looking at Unit 4 instead of 116 when it's just by number. So I see, yeah, theirs is over 5 million, and there's some Champaign because I guess some of their property was in Champaign, but a smaller amount.
Correct.
Oh. Thank you.
Is there any more discussion? All right, saying none, clerk, will you please call the roll?
Councilmember Wu?
Yes.
Councilmember Evans?
Yes.
Councilmember Hersey?
Yes.
Councilmember Colacetti?
Yes.
Councilmember Bishop?
Yes.
Councilmember Wilkin?
Yes.
Councilmember Quisenberry?
Yes.
All right, that motion passes. The next item on the regular agenda is ordinance number 2025-06-018. Mr. Quisenberry.
Yes, this is an ordinance authorizing the lease of certain real estate, PIN numbers 25-15-29-400-023 and 25-15-29-400-024, located in Champaign County, Illinois, to Prairie Ag Concepts doing business as Prairie Fruits Farm and Creamery, and that is moved for approval by the Committee of the Whole.
Second.
All right, motion made by Mr. Quisenberry, seconded by Ms. Wu. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, clerk, will you please call the roll?
Councilmember Wu?
Yes.
Councilmember Evans?
Yes.
Councilmember Hersey?
Yes.
Councilmember Colasetti?
Yes.
Councilmember Bishop? Councilmember Bishop? Councilmember Wilkin?
Yes.
Councilmember Quisenberry?
Yes.
All right, that motion passes. Next, we have reports of special committees, which there aren't any. So now we have a few reports of officers relating to the proposed budget. So we'll start with the budget presentation for the Urbana Free Library. Ms. Rachel Fuller.
All right, good evening, everybody. Give me just one moment to pull up my presentation. All right, good evening. I'm here to speak with you about the library's FY26 budget. This budget comes before you with the support of the library board. And just to give you some general background information, the library receives the bulk of its revenues from property taxes. That is the primary funding source for the Urbana Free Library. 87% of the library's budget in FY26 is from property taxes. The other assorted funding sources that you can see there are a myriad. All of those together make up the remaining funding, and not a single pie slice of the rest of that chart totals more than 4%. I can also tell you that the library requested and received a 4% increase from our Champaign County partners this year. That's Champaign County and the Champaign County Circuit Clerk. Contributions from our Champaign County partners total just under $38,000. When it comes to expenses, the library makes sure that it follows all of the necessary standards. And in particular, I wanted to call out two standards from Serving Our Public 4.0, Standards for Illinois Public Libraries. We continue to meet the standards with regards to salaries. The first standard is that salaries account for up to 60%, and salaries plus fringe benefits account for up to 70% of the total budget. In FY26, staff wages account for 52% of the overall 802 general fund, and those fringe benefits account for 15%, which is a total of 67%, including rounding. All staff will receive a cost of living increase to the base level of pay, and staff who are eligible will also receive their step increase. The second way that the library meets standards is with regards to collections. The state standards request that 8 to 12% of the operating budget be spent on materials for patrons, and I'm pleased to share that the library meets the standards in two different ways. The first is that if you take into account the library's materials as well as supplies, automation, and staffing costs necessary to make those materials available to patrons, we spend 18.02% of our budget, which is well above the suggested range by the state standards. And if you take a stricter interpretation, so you remove staffing costs, supplies, automation, et cetera, we still meet the state standards at spending just over 8% of our budget on collections for patrons. So coming up in FY26, we have a few items of note that are impacting our budget, and those are both IT and facilities-related projects to support infrastructure maintenance and improvements to the library. The first is we have budgeted into our budget server, prox card, and camera upgrades for the facilities, and we're working that in concert with the upcoming first floor remodel, which is scheduled to begin around the beginning of August. We are working with architects Ingberg Anderson, who are well known for working with libraries, and we've been pleased working with them so far. We anticipate that project, which is possible thanks to the generous support of the library's foundation, friends, and the city of Urbana for those infrastructure upgrades, will be mostly complete by the end of calendar year 25. Once those upgrades are complete, that will include our first floor welcome desk area as well as Megan's room down on the ground floor. Then we will turn our eyes to other parts of the building that require facilities upgrades in coming years. I am happy to answer any questions that you might have at this time.
Are there any questions from council? James?
I do have a question. Thank you for this summary. The Champaign County Partners, the request that you made for additional funding, is that primarily to support the archives?
That is correct, yes.
And how are we doing with regard to getting support from the county for the archives relative to how much work that is?
Oh, so thank you for asking. We certainly would not say no to additional funding or support. That being said, when we came forward with a request, it was a request that was made for the first time in several years. They did honor that request. So I anticipate that as costs continue to increase for staffing and for making collections available, that we will need to continue to ask for an increase in support in that way.
All right, thank you. And one kind of follow-up, first floor remodel, that is the floor with the main service desk as opposed to the garden level or the second floor?
That is correct.
Okay.
And so some of you may have seen, and of course you are certainly most welcome to attend our foundation's giant desk concert. You may be familiar with the tiny desk concert. We happen to have a giant desk that's over 66 feet long. And so it has served us well in its time, and we are grateful for the support of the Urbana Rotary Club who made that possible. And it is time for us to give some well-needed love to that first floor area. And so we are going to celebrate the wonderful service that has been provided by that welcome desk, as well as our donors who have made these things possible. Tickets are on sale for $50 a piece, and it's a Sunday evening, so what else are you doing?
I do remember how proud Fred was of that desk, but that was a different time, different service model. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Grace?
Thanks so much for the presentation and the work that y'all are doing at the library. I think my question is if, your budget here kind of includes, I know there's always like the wants versus the needs and stuff, but just with background that when we're looking at sometimes like city grants and there's applications from the library and it's like, this is a cool program, but we've got limited things and, like we kind of share tax budget money and like if there's a cool thing to do, I feel like an appropriate place might be just in the library budget. And so I guess question being if this includes some of the basics, some of the enhancements, some of those other kinds of aspects that are needed or wanted in the library operations.
Yes, thank you for asking. So this budget includes any dollars that the library would hope to spend in the upcoming fiscal year, and the library has received funds. For instance, after receiving ARPA funds, the library hired a bilingual programming specialist, and that salary, of course, is reflected in here, as well as any additional grants that the library is receiving. Oftentimes we'll apply for arts grants, and in the event that those are granted and we need to, we will do budget amendments to certainly accept those grants.
Thank you.
Any additional questions? All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next, we will have staff report from the Urbana Fire Department.
Good evening. I got a short upper body, so I got to get up high in this seat. Man, as always, it's a pleasure to come before you guys and present our budget for our requests that are requested above our baseline allocations. Tonight, I have with me both my deputies who will be presenting on the budget. Tal Prendergast and Steve Doggett. And I also want to make sure that we give credit to our management analyst who helps us tremendously with our budget preparation. That's Mr. Tariq Azim. He's not here tonight, but just wanted you guys to know that he helps out tremendously. So with that, I'll give it over to Steve.
Good evening. First, thank you guys for your time. We really appreciate all the time that we have and the opportunity to speak with you. I'm going to move through some of this fairly quickly, just out of respect for everybody's time this evening and just to provide ample opportunities for questions as we go through this. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started. Just a quick summary of this budget request. For 2026, we met at the beginning of this year and we began to prepare for this budget. As we prepared for this budget, we sat down first and created a list of what we feel is going to be most impactful for the city of Urbana. Once we created that list, we met on multiple occasions, both internally and with city leadership, to really evaluate what that list looked like and then prioritize where we need to be based off of what the city priorities are, where we are financially, and what can, again, be most impactful. So with that, we have identified 3 priority investments that we want to present to you for the 2026 budget year. We're going to go into the first proposal. The first proposal is for uniforms and personal protective equipment. This addresses a couple different things for us. Number one, our safety is paramount for all of our employees. We want to make sure that we have safe equipment that we can provide all of our staff. So when we do go on emergency response, we're coming back safe, and we're limiting any injuries that we can avoid at all costs. The other part is uniforms. The other part is our contractual obligations. So not only do we want to make sure that our employees are safe, but we also want to make sure that we're following the contractual obligations. And so when we say this is required by CBA, some of that is referenced by the current CBA with 1147. So with this, we have an illustration of a firefighter on your presentation screen, and this just lists out some of the rough estimates for the cost of the firefighting gear that our staff wears every time that they go out on an emergency call. We can see that this is a significant cost for our department. We have made some adjustments throughout the years to be the most efficient that we possibly can and recognize those costs. Some of those things, for example, when we have new hires, we use rental gear right off of the start, just to make sure that, number one, when we're putting our new hires through extensive training, we're providing them gear that we're not going to put extensive wear and tear on and then have them come back to service. So we rent that gear, we put them through their training, and then after the initial training, after their candidate year is over, that's when we go ahead and make that initial purchase to make sure, number one, our candidate has made it through that initial year, but number two, they get through all of the training without putting extensive wear on it. Also, after the first year, we are obligated to get them their Class A dress uniform again after they complete their probation. We've all seen people come up for the ceremony dressed well. That's something that we take pride in. We take pride in our appearance just as much as our performance. But we also make sure that that is something that they're ready for and that we're accommodating. Over the last few years, we've experienced a lot of hires that, or a lot of transition in our department that has created new hires. We are a staff of 64 men and women. Out of those 64, a third of our department currently has less than 3 years on the job. That is a very, very young department, which is great. It's a great opportunity for us, but it also brings some challenges, especially when we're talking about financing all of this new stuff, this new equipment, this new training, all of the things that are encompassed in that first few years. In addition to that, throughout the life of this gear, NFPA's estimated life requirement is 10 years. So every 10 years, that that new purchase has to be replaced based off of NFPA standards or the National Fire Protection Association standards. One of the things that is significant for us right now that we are working on is creating a sustainable uniform replacement and personal protection equipment replacement plan. So that way we're spreading this out a little bit more and making it efficient. Unfortunately, one of the constant reminders of COVID is that there were challenges. One of the challenges of COVID for us was getting that equipment and continuing that replacement cycle that we usually go through. So unfortunately with COVID, we were delayed on that cycle, and now we're playing catch up a little bit, and that's another reason for the increased request on uniforms. With that, we'll go to our second item of request. The second item of request we have is for training. One of the number one assets that we have in our department is our staff. No questions, hands down. We have an incredible professional staff, and a lot of our emergency response, actually the majority of our emergency response, is a direct reflection of how they showed up. They show up prepared, well-trained, and ready to go. Again, just referencing back, we have 21 new hires, and those new hires are going through constant training. They're eager and hungry to learn, but we have to make sure that they're trained and ready to go for every response to keep them safe, to keep our community members safe as well. In addition to providing that initial training, we're also providing ongoing training. We're providing ongoing training that's required by the State Fire Marshal's Office just for compliance. We're offering training that is also obligated by the collective bargaining agreement for things such as promotional testing as we progress on as well. So when we look at all of this stuff, again, we are looking at really investing into our people to make sure that our community remains safe. And the last item that we're going to discuss this evening is station alerting hardware. This is specific to Urbana Fire Station 4. Our alerting software at Urbana Fire Station 4 is failing. This is the equipment that just alerts us for an emergency response when we're in the station. If you'll take a look at the picture on the bottom right, this is a picture of our current alerting system. You can see that on there is a pager similar to the one I'm holding here. This is just my personal pager. This personal pager is exactly that. It's a personal alerting device to make sure that we're alerted for an emergency response every time that we're out. For example, going on another emergency run, or if we're out in the community. The picture that's illustrated there is showing that this personal pager is connected to an amplifier, and that amplifier is hooked up to speakers, just as the ones that are amplifying the voice here tonight. What we are looking for is to make sure that we're improving that system, because currently it's extremely hard to hear the audio for Station 4. That delays our response, that delays our efficiency as we go out the door. But what it's also doing is it's also providing a consistent equipment as we move forward as well. As you know, we have 2 stations that are opening here very soon, and we're asking that we replace that equipment with the equipment that would be consistent with the 2 new stations. So that would provide some consistency there. On the middle and the top picture of this presentation, you can see the different alerting equipment that we would be looking at replacing. Some of these have lights on them as well as just audio. And then on the top, the top is a scroll screen that actually comes with this system as well. So not only are we getting alerting audio, but we would also be getting a scroll screen that would be providing that address as a call comes in. This is all compatible with the new METCAD software that they just recently upgraded to.
All right, thank you.
All right.
Is there, oh, sorry.
No, so I'll just finish up real quick. This is not only just to meet our collective bargaining agreement commitments. This is not just for safety, but this is holistic in everything. We're looking at making sure that we're addressing replacement of equipment and keeping our people safe, but doing it all while still supporting the council goals, still enhancing our public safety to the community. So we want to focus on that, and we want to provide this just to make sure that everything that we do is a commitment to the city, and everything that we do is a commitment to making sure that people are safe. So with that, on behalf of the men and women of the Urbana Fire Department, I do say thank you for hearing us tonight. Thank you for considering and investing into our department.
All right, sorry, I was not rushing you guys either. So.
That's right. I like to talk fast anyway. So,
all right, we'll start with Mary Alice. I'm sorry.
It's all right. Thank you. I had a couple of questions. My first one is there still discussion with the agreement with the University of Illinois?
There is current discussion with the agreement,
And that leads me to my second question, which I believe Station 4 is at the University of Illinois in the parking garage, correct?
That is correct.
And so I think the current agreement says that they provide the building and we provide all the stuff related to firefighting. Is that correct?
Correct.
Because they have some kind of very odd old piece of equipment that is like this little ticker tape, right?
That's exactly correct. So
okay.
Yep.
I'm not because I was like, it's
no,
very
it's called the Gamewell system. We have an old Gamewell system. It's over 100 years old. Some would say it's antiquated, but it's the most consistent system that works.
Yep.
However, it is consistent in the fact that every building at the U of I as well has a communication device in it that just basically reports directly back to that Gamewell system.
Okay. And then, so that was my question about the updated of the signal. And my next question has to do with the uniforms. So it looked to me like it costs approximately $5,000 per firefighter. Does that sound right to you?
That's approximately. It's actually just a little bit more than that, but
yeah,
yes.
It's like 5.1, 5.2, something like that.
5240.
So how many firefighters will that cover? Is it the whole department or is it a portion of the department?
So that's a portion of the department. And so as we talked about some of our newer hires, we have current new hires that are still in rental gear right now. And again, that's strategic to make sure that we're getting through the first year before we make that significant investment. So we have approximately 11 of those currently that are going to be getting new gear immediately. And that is right now. That is also not including the remainder of the department that is in the cycle of replacement. So some are coming up, some are already up because of what we had talked about with getting off cycle with COVID, and some will be coming up in the next year.
And that's my next question. What is the cycle? What's the...
So,
how many years?
And that's where we want to be as efficient as we possibly can. Ideally, we're targeting for approximately a 5-year replacement for everybody. And we're replacing sets of gear every year. But as we cycle through, we're picking 5 years. Number one is because when we are on duty, there's nothing that says that we're not going to get more than one fire. Current statistics, cancer carcinogens are one of the major things that firefighters have to face right now. So they encourage as soon as we go to any significant event, including smoke or fire and combustibles, we make sure that we wash it as soon as we get back to the station. We also shower within an hour. So we are going to be washing those, and then the older gear that we're currently in will be our backup set until we can get everything washed. So we have a cycle within a cycle, I guess, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
We do have some backups for that, but we're also spreading throughout that 10-year cycle for each individual, and that's based off of a spreadsheet to be as efficient as we possibly can.
Okay, my last question. So the SAFER grant ends, and I noticed in the budget book it said that one person will be leaving soon, and that will be kind of the one that we won't be rehiring. Did we have 5 or 6 in the SAFER grant?
So we had 6 in SAFER,
Okay.
And SAFER actually ended at the end of February of this spring. So through attrition, we no longer have that 6th position. We have 5
And
funded.
So this includes the 5 without the SAFER grant?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Chris?
Yeah, to piggyback about the uniforms, along with the decontamination stations at the 2 new stations, right? These new uniforms that we're buying now, are they by chance, and this is really hard to predict, and there's no guarantees in life, but are is there a chance that these new uniforms might reduce the incidence of throat cancers and testicular cancers of our firefighters later in life?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there's constant technology, there's constant research for gear. We're lucky because we have the University of Illinois right here that does that very research. Some of the biggest things that we can combat right now with that very question is getting back to the station and washing that gear. That's going to be the most effective to
That's first defense, right?
Yeah, to defend against carcinogens, and those two are at the top of the list.
Great. And the supplemental training will probably happen mostly at the Fire Training Institute on Neal Street?
So there's actually a variety of training that we have. So we have the ability to use the University of Illinois, and that's a great asset to us. It's right in our backyard. There's a few experiences where we do travel or we bring somebody in. Part of bringing somebody in is beneficial to us because we're actually paying a higher dollar to bring somebody in, but we're paying a lower dollar by impacting everybody on the department. So for example, and I'm just making up numbers, if I spend $10,000 to bring somebody in, but I have 60 people trained, now I'm only paying a very small fraction compared to the average class right now, which is roughly, help me out, Tal, about $1,000 roughly per person. So we do have a good variety of that, and that just depends on the class because, as we said before, there's some classes that we have to have that are required for promotion. So, for example, our fire officer certifications are required for promotion. We have to provide those and make sure that each person has the opportunity to take those classes so they can promote up.
Great. And last question. So the alerting system at Station 4, will that be the gradual alerting system? I understand that abrupt waking up, abrupt loud noises is not long-term healthy, but this will be a sophisticated kind of waking up.
That's correct. So they call it a ramping system or a ramped alerting system, and basically it starts on a gradual tone that increases in tone, and the same with the volume, and that is you've done your homework. This is something that takes a little bit of stress off the cardiovascular system because if you have that rapid wake up in the middle of the night, if anybody's woken up in the middle of the night and heard some crazy noise, your heart rate goes through the roof. This is to try to prevent that. So as we get up, we can figure out what's going on, quickly get to the apparatus and respond to the call.
Awesome. All right, Grace?
Thanks for the presentation. I think that these increases seem reasonable. I was wondering, when I was looking at the actual budget numbers here, that it looks like your 25 budget versus estimate is a little off. Like there was an extra 200,000 spent this current year than was budgeted. And I'm just wondering how we remedy that, or if that's a conversation for a larger overall budget discussion, that's okay.
I'm sorry, which one is that?
I'm looking at page 93 in the big old budget booklet. I don't know what you're looking at there. Sorry.
Oh.
I can answer this. So you might recall that when we adopt a budget, we also present a budget amendment ordinance. And when we do that budget amendment, we're revising the budget to match the estimated amounts. So to the extent that we're showing they're going to be over budget here, we're going to take care of that on the 23rd with that budget amendment.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And then I had just other comments we've talked about before, some of the different vehicles and if there's any ways to avoid taking out the big ladder trucks when there's calls not involving fire, which we can we have and can continue to talk more about. But just to keep in mind, if we do have other big vehicle purchases, that whatever we can do to have other vehicle options. And also understand that, I don't know what percentage, but a non-insignificant percentage of your work is also medical calls and lift assists and things. And so also excited about exploring possibly with the alternative response program, any things that we can do to take some of those less skilled tasks off of your plate so that you can work on putting out fires and the advanced medical response and things that people have that specialized training in. So just some thoughts. If you have a response, happy to hear it. Not required.
I'll just throw a couple things out if you don't mind, Chief. A couple things we're starting to do the alternative response study. Actually, we've had several conversations on just apparatus as a whole and what we can do as a whole to be the most efficient that we possibly can. We still need to look at a lot of different things as far as what that looks like for us, making sure that we're staffing appropriately still while taking up those opportunities. We're kind of curious to see what happens with that alternative response model as well as far as just the studying itself. So we'll be happy to have further discussions. Discussions. I don't have a lot of information as far as what that response is, but we'd be encouraged to have some of those discussions here really soon.
Any more? Sharice.
With the uniform costs that you have, does that include the dress uniform? You guys pay for their dress uniforms?
That's correct.
How much do those run?
So the dress uniforms, similar to what we have in presentation, those are right around $1,000.
Okay.
So.
I just wanted to, okay. Better not gain any weight. The other thing I wanted to ask was, I know there's, you said supplemental training required by CBA, and I'm gonna sound stupid and I don't care. What is CBA?
Collective bargaining agreement.
What is it?
Collective bargaining agreement. So that's the firefighter's contract.
Okay.
So that's what we were talking about with some of the, for example, promotional opportunities. When they go for promotional testing, anytime that they do that, they're still required to have a certain level of training to be able to accept that promotion. So that training is offered, that supplemental training is offered, and it's required for them to accept any promotion, so we need to provide it.
So could you give me an example of like certain training they, so if they want to be a lieutenant or a sergeant, I don't know what the...
Yeah, so we'll start with our driver. Our drivers are called our engineer. Our engineer takes a class that's called Fire Apparatus Engineer, and basically that teaches them how to operate the apparatus and not just drive it, but actually pump the apparatus so we can get water out, make sure that it's the appropriate amount of water. It involves a high level of mathematics to make sure that you're catching that appropriate amount of water. For the next example, which would be a company officer, they're required to go to Fire Officer 1, which is the first level of fire officer for that rank. That's just, again, just another level of classification that they're tested on, and that information encompasses things like dealing with fire ground emergencies, dealing with people in general, just as a couple of examples.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? All right. Thank you, gentlemen.
All right. Thank you very much.
Good night. All right. Next, we will have staff report on the general fund reserves.
I'm going to
Neville?
give a quick introduction on this while we're waiting for Don and Braden to get up there. You haven't quite seen a presentation like this on the budget from us before, and the reason we decided to do it this year was that every year we always get lots of questions about what's in the fund balance. And, how much is the general fund balance? What percent of recurring expenditures, and what is in there? And this year we have some pretty significant reserves included there as well. So Don and Braden are just going to talk you through this.
Good evening. So tonight, Braden and we will provide a brief overview of the city general fund reserves. will focus on how our current reserve levels compare to the city fund balance policy. And we also will highlight the portions that have been assigned for specific purposes. So general fund reserve represent the accumulated balance of unspent funds from previous years, and they serve as an important indicator of the city's financial health and give us flexibility to respond to changing conditions. And why reserves matter. So the first one is they serve several critical purposes. The first one is to provide financial cushions during emergencies or economic downturns. For example, like during the COVID-19 pandemic, the reserves help us offset any sudden fluctuations in revenue without immediate service cuts. And then it also helps ensure uninterrupted deliveries of essential city services and also support cash flows needs before major revenues are received. For example, like property tax, we receive that amount just twice a year. And so having a good reserves will help us bridge the gap in the meantime. And then it also strengthens the city's financial stability and creditworthiness. In the future, if the city were to issue new bonds, and we would like to get the city a credit rating, and having a good fund balance will help us get a good credit rating, and that will help lower the borrowing costs for major capital projects if we were to issue bonds. And then it also provides flexibility to respond to urgent or any strategic one-time needs, and we will see that in a little bit. So this is our current fund balance policy. So the city current policy is to maintain an unassigned reserve equal to at least 25% of recurring revenue, recurring general fund expenditures, and reserve may fall below 20% only in the event of a catastrophic need. And then if the reserve falls below the 25% target, the finance director will develop a plan to restore the balance within 3 to 5 years. And we think that the 25% is appropriate because the city relies on a lot of cyclical revenue sources like sales and income taxes. And also we are also dependent on transfer from other funds to support core services. We also have a significant backlog of unmet capital needs and also ongoing fiscal uncertainty at the state and the federal level. So this chart here shows us the fund balance for fiscal year 26. So this will be projected amount at the end of fiscal year 26. And so the projected balance amount at the end of fiscal year 26 is $17.7 million. And it's broken down as follows. So we have $12.2 million in unassigned fund balance and $5.5 million in assigned fund balance. And our recurrent general expenditures are approximately $47.8 million, so a 25% reserve target is about $11.9 million. And this puts us slightly above the policy's target at 25.6%, or about $300,000 over the minimum requirement. So in addition to our unassigned fund balance, we've also assigned about $5.5 million to support some key priorities, such as $873,000 is reserved for the second year and the third year of the community engagement team. And of this, 533,000 was already approved in the fiscal year 25 budget, and the remaining 340,000 is new in the FY26 budget, and it specifically supports the community engagement team police sergeant position. And we also have 3.1 million reserved to potentially support CDBG and home program if federal funding is reduced or eliminated. We also have $1.5 million reserved to support other Urbana-based programs that are not directly administered by the city, in case they also experience a loss in outside funding. And then I'm going to hand it over to Braden, and he's going to talk more about home CDBG and other programs in Urbana.
Thank you, Don. So I just want to start off by acknowledging the huge impact that our federal resources through HUD provide to low-income Urbana residents. Home and CDBG represent significant resources that support a variety of really critical programs, including affordable housing development, rental utility assistance for low-income Urbana residents, shelter and services for individuals and families experiencing homelessness, critical public facility improvements in our low-income neighborhoods in Urbana, as well as economic development support for low-income Urbana residents. So we know that in this current climate, a lot of these programs are at risk. And so that is one of the reasons that this funding has been set aside in the event over the next the four-year period that our funds are impacted. So to a portion of this, and I just wanted to call out, the staffing cost. Again, as I mentioned earlier in my presentation about the consolidated plan, grant staff are paid through these federal grants. Our salaries are paid based on those admin and planning caps that we receive through our HUD grants in order to support the implementation of these critical programs that we provide in the community. So I just wanted to provide a little bit of context of the breakdown when we're talking about that $3.1 million that is set aside. A significant portion of that is to sustain the staff that operate these programs, including myself. So we broke it down here. The grants division is currently budgeted at 3 full-time employees. So you see that number there. But we also included what the total would be if we needed to reduce to potentially 2 full-time staff, what that cost would be to the city, and then comparing that to the actual program cost that staff are implementing in the community. So you see it's a little bit less than half in terms of the cost for staffing. So that $1.5 million for other programs, I just wanted to provide a little bit of detail about what we mean by other programs. We know that disruptions to federal funds are not just going to impact the city, right? It's not just going to impact our HUD programs. There are significant other programs operating in Champaign County and in Urbana that could likely see significant disruptions or elimination. And just to kind of backtrack for a second to talk about home and CDBG, the president's current budget has zeroed out both of those programs. So if that were to be passed by Congress, that would mean for the city going into fiscal year 2027, not this upcoming fiscal year, but the fiscal year after, we would have $0 for those programs. But again, that's not unique to other critical programs in Champaign County. So we wanted to highlight kind of what we're talking about when we're talking about supporting other programs. So Cunningham Township, they are part of a rental assistance collaborative program with Champaign County Regional Planning Commission and City of Champaign Township to provide comprehensive homelessness prevention rental assistance. That program is funded through a federal state pass-through funding, which could be impacted. You can see the annual amount there, about $340,000 per year just for Urbana residents to receive rent and utility assistance. This RPC number that you see here, that $3 million, that's for LIHEAP. LIHEAP has a huge impact on Urbana residents, and the word is that they are anticipating that that program will not be continuing. I did have the numbers just to give a sense of, I mean, talking about numbers is one thing, talking about the actual people impacted. In Urbana, LIHEAP on average serves about 5,000 residents. Now that does include residents in Urbana that are technically outside the city limits, but it's a sizable population of low-income households that are relying on LIHEAP for really critical utility assistance to prevent shutoffs, to pay utility arrears, and things of that nature. On average, LIHEAP provides about $610 annually per household for that utility assistance. And then the Housing Authority. Housing Choice Vouchers, it's a huge program that keeps people in homes, that gets people rental units, keeps a roof over their head. In Urbana alone, Housing Authority commits about $5.5 million annually in housing vouchers to Urbana households, and in terms of numbers served, that comes to about just over 700 Urbana households annually. Housing Authority, you know, again, there's a lot of uncertainty, there's a lot of unknowns at this point, but the HUD is looking at substantial changes to eligibility criteria that could result in sizable percentages of people currently receiving Housing Choice Vouchers to lose those vouchers, which would mean those people would be immediately entered into homelessness. So again, that 1.5 million set aside, you know, the city doesn't have enough resources to fully supplement these programs in the event that the worst case scenario happens. But we're acknowledging that, you know, in the event that there are reductions or cuts in funding, that we have some cushion to be able to provide support for the most vulnerable in our community, and really to make sure that we can keep people off the street and keep them housed.
So in summary, we are currently in full compliance with the city's financial policy, and our reserves, our assigned reserve allow us to strategically support community priorities and also grant funded initiatives. And one thing to remember is that we need budget amendments are required before we can use any of these reserves. So we will bring a budget amendment to City Council if we intend to use any of these reserves. And so overall, the city continues to take a balanced and cautious approach to maintaining healthy reserves while ensuring the delivery of critical services. And Braden and I will be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you both. All right, Mary Alice.
Thank you very much for this presentation. I think it was a very good strategy to prevent lots and lots of questions. So I just wanted to confirm, did I hear correctly that reoccurring expenses was 48 million? I didn't write it down.
Let me see. I think it was 48.7.
Okay, so I was close. All right.
Yeah, 47.8.
47.8, okay.
Yeah.
And then my next question is to Braden. I didn't understand one of your slides, if you wouldn't mind pulling that back up. It was the one about salaries. Yeah, so what I was looking here, this is how I read the slide, but I don't think it's the way it was intended, that there are 3 full-time people that support it, and it costs $1.6 million for those 3 full-time employees.
That's over a 4-year period, yes.
Okay, because I was like, this doesn't add up.
I wish, but it's not.
That's better. Okay, thank you.
Otherwise, I want that job. Are there any additional questions? Grace?
Thanks. I was trying to figure out from the first pie chart you showed us, so that, yeah, the unassigned fund balance, 12.2 million, is, it looks like, 25% of 47.8 million, right? So that's our 25% reserve, that like blue chunk of the pie on the left circle.
So that's a little bit more than our 25%.
Okay.
So, yeah.
And then I guess because then that whole brown part of the pie circle on the left we could spend and we're still above our policy of 25% fund balance. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question again?
That 12.2 million of the unassigned fund balance satisfies our 25% of recurring expenses policy, right? So in a sense, we're not dipping into our reserve below 25% by using that whole circle on the right. We're not dipping below 25%. So we're not really going into our fund reserve below that. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
So I guess I'm just confused why so are we saying we wouldn't use that unless we have to if we're losing other funds? Like I understand CDBG and home if we're lost or other funds. I'm not understanding how the community engagement team falls into a fund balance allocation.
So the community engagement team is in there because if you remember, that was funded as a 3-year pilot project, right? So FY26 will in fact be year 1 because we haven't started that program up yet. And then we've set aside funds for years 2 and 3 to make sure that we can cover the remainder of the pilot program.
Why is it coming from these reserve funds? I'm just not understanding why it's classified here under a reserved fund. That sounds like for national funding drawbacks, kind of emergencies.
No, they're different. I mean, they're reserve. They're all additional reserves into our they're reserves in addition to our basic 25% reserve, but that is, yes, of a different nature than the others. But it's still part of the reserve. We're trying to explain everything that's reserved in the budget, and that is part of it.
Or no, I mean, if that's the case, everything budgeted is reserved in the budget, right? Like, not getting why how we're drawing the line here.
No, expenditures aren't reserved. They're budgeted as expenditures. So this is money that we're setting aside, designating within the fund balance in the general fund to say this is set aside for a specific purpose.
Thank you. I was trying to see if I had another question in here. I think that's all for now. Thank you.
All right, Sharice.
Elizabeth, I just want to understand, kind of piggybacking on Grace, that money was supposed to go into the police budget, but is this the same money we're talking about that we couldn't pass as a budget amendment? And so it just went back into the reserves?
Well, it's a little more complicated than that. So the community engagement team pilot program didn't really get started in FY25, right? So part of it is that we're pushing back that first year into FY26, right? So the whole program, everything that would have happened in FY25 is now in the FY26 budget. And then we're setting aside still the second and third years, just as we did in the FY25 budget. We showed the first year of expenses and the next 2 years as a reserve.
Okay, no, thank you.
Chris.
I just want to review, Braden, so I've got this straight. LIHEAP, 5,000 people in Urbana get LIHEAP, about $610 a year to pay the utility bill, right? That's just LIHEAP, 5,000 folks in Urbana.
That's correct, yeah.
Okay. Second, I want to clarify, HUD is providing $5.5 million in housing vouchers to just Urbana, and that represents 700 households, right?
That's correct. Yep.
Okay. In Urbana.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Jaya?
I have a comment and a question. Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I want to say how important I think this is, and I'm very grateful to see that we're doing some contingency planning. Thinking about best case is lovely. We can think about the most likely, but I think it is important we think about worst case scenario too, and not just for the city, but also the entities that we support. So I'm really, really appreciative of, there's no way one city can make up for the federal government, but also thinking about what we can do is really important. And I say that partially from personal experience working in nonprofits in this community. I was working at a nonprofit when the state didn't pass a budget for multiple years, and it went down to just me for 6 months. We can't let that happen to people's housing. So I'm very, very grateful to see that we're thinking ahead, and I just hope that other municipalities, other state entities will think about that too, because there may be some very difficult decisions that need to be made, but making sure at least people have food, housing, and electricity, you know, anything that we can do, I think this is really important. So thank you for laying it out so clearly. I hope that this helps answer the questions. I know I've received a few of like, wait, if the city has all this money, why aren't we spending it? We're not spending it so we can do this, right? And I do think that conversation about, well, okay, how do we make up for the fact that we are underinvesting in our infrastructure, that there are other gaps? We need to continue those conversations too. But this is not a normal budget year, and making sure that we're planning accordingly is really important. So I just appreciate all the time and energy that's gone into some contingency planning. Yeah. Yes, there will continue to be needed, I'm sure.
Grace?
Thank you. Echo Jaya's points here. I appreciate breaking it down to help us understand it better. And along that, if I could just go back to trying to understand the difference between an assigned reserved versus a recurring expense. Like with the community engagement, is that because it's a shorter term? And like, for example, the alternative response program is a reoccurring expense because it's kind of more indefinite? Is that a way to understand that distinction?
I'm going to give this a shot, but tell me if I don't if I don't get it. So when we talk about assigned and unassigned reserves, those are not budgeted expenditures at all. Those can't be spent without prior council authorization. They're part of the fund balance. So there's that. But yes, we do think of recurring expenditures in the budget very differently from one-time expenditures, right? So when last year the city council decided to dedicate a certain amount of recurring expense to the alternative response program, what that says to us when you say recurring expenses, we're going to budget that every year indefinitely and until somebody, the city council, makes a decision not to budget that anymore.
I see. Thank you. And is that why the community response, because of that pilot, that it's kind of a reoccurring expense, potentially only for a shorter amount of time, and still needs to be approved each year for those years?
Yeah, I think of it as a one-time expense that's going to happen 3 times.
Yeah. Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay. Thank you.
Chandra, did you have any questions, comments?
Yes. Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, great. So at one point in the slides, it talked about a plan if things drop below, is it 20%, 25% funds in the balance? Is that plan already written out, or is it based on the circumstances in which the reason why the balance dropped in the first place?
So the financial policies that have been approved by the city council say that if it drops below that level, the finance director has to present a plan to the city council of how to recover the fund balance, basically. But there's not a specific plan because it's going to depend quite a lot on exactly what happens and how far we have to dip into the fund balances and what resources we have available at that time.
I see. Thank you.
All right. Is there any additional questions? Okay. Thank you. All right. Our last item of business this evening are 2 mayoral board and commission appointments. I have bios here. All right. So we have Sarah Womack, who will be appointed to the Sustainability Advisory Commission with the term ending June 30th, 2028. And then Deb Newell, who will be appointed to the Urbana Free Library Board with the term ending June 30th, 2026. I will read a brief bio for Sarah Womack. She's lived in Urbana for over 10 years and works as a research specialist in agriculture. She currently manages a poultry research farm at the University of Illinois, where she coordinates research projects, oversees daily bird care, supervises staff, and manages departmental budgets. Sarah holds a bachelor's degree in biology and a master's degree in animal science, both from the University of Illinois. She says, I am interested in serving on the Sustainability Advisory Commission because I would like to use my skills, knowledge, and passion to give back to the community that has given me so much for such a significant part of my life. I believe my background will give me a solid base of knowledge to build off of to serve my community. I am invested in the future of my community and the people who make it special. And then sorry, don't laugh at me. All right, and then the background for Deb Newell. She has been a resident of Urbana for over 45 years and is a retired librarian. She served as a library coordinator for all 8 schools in the Urbana School District, as well as the building librarian at Thomas Paine Elementary. In her role as coordinator, Deb managed district library budgets, wrote grant proposals, gave presentations to the school board, and provided support to building librarians. As a school librarian, she taught classes, supported both teachers and students, and maintained the school's collection. She says, as a librarian and U.S. citizen, I strongly adhere to the American Library Association's intellectual freedom guidelines to advocate for every library user to read, seek information, and speak freely as guaranteed by the First Amendment. I wish to serve on the Urbana Free Library Board to promote a strong public library that will provide a well-balanced collection and varied programming that will supply free access to every member of the Urbana community. Can I get a motion to approve these 2 appointments?
Mayor. I will move that Sarah Womack be be part of the Sustainable Advisory Commission for a term ending June 30th, 2028, as well as Deb Newell for the Urbana Free Library Board and term ending June 30th, 2026.
Second.
Motion made by Mary Alice, seconded by Sharice. Is there any discussion? All right, with no discussion, will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Wu?
Yes.
Councilmember Evans?
Yes.
Councilmember Hersey?
Yes.
Councilmember Colasetti?
Yes.
Councilmember Bishop?
Yes.
Councilmember Wilkin?
Yes.
Councilmember Quisenberry?
Yes.
All right, that motion passes. With no further business before the body, this meeting is adjourned.